Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's January 10th, 2022. And I'd like to invite everybody to please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at 5 o'clock, Council of Aging, and that's Lisa, you're up. Talk about the budget.
So I can honestly say that never having done this before, I just followed the basic document formats that were available in the office, several iterations of directory. So you have the basic spreadsheet that we attached, and then a write-up of what my proposed changes are about. The high level of the budget is that, oddly enough, when you add both the accounts under 541 and then the senior lunch program on the second page, which is account 545, the sum of those two is roughly $3,291 less than our current fiscal year's budget. Okay, so in some ways, there's a bit of a give back, if that's attractive. But what I've proposed to do with the monies, in terms of keeping to a 2% cost of living adjustment as requested, and trying to economize and be efficient, I've reallocated where the current budget has been assigned. And that's based on, since filling this job since late April, observing certain patterns of what the needs going forward are going to be in this next 16-month cycle to get to the end of this fiscal year and then getting into fiscal year 2023. We need to replace a retiring outreach coordinator who also happens to be a very gifted shine counselor. Okay? And we may not be so lucky to get an outreach coordinator replacement with shine experience. And if we don't, what typically happens there is we will request through the Shine office in Springfield a Shine volunteer. And those are people who've gone through the state's Shine training, and some of them may just be out of 1 year of training and pass the exam. Some people are out of multiple years of training because they can't pass the exam the first go around. So you hope to get somebody who, for that open enrollment window, which is, this year was October 15th, and it ran 7 weeks. It ended on December the 6th. That's when senior citizens are allowed to review where they've been with their health insurance, the past cycle, and their prescription drug plans, perhaps, and say, I've had a change in my health status, and the new drug's going to cost me, I have to make a change. Or, I didn't have a change in my health status, but the plan I had didn't work out as I thought, and I ended up having more out of pocket. I maybe didn't understand my plan. And that's what the Shine counselor is there to do. Apart from that open enrollment window, there are seniors in the town who throughout the year have Medicare questions, namely those who are turning 65 and they're getting ready to have to sign up for Medicare and make certain choices that are very critical. Because if in the future, no one has a crystal ball, something changes in a 66 or 67-year-old or a 70-year-old's health, if they didn't have a drug plan to begin with, they can be penalized for the rest of their lives going down the road to pick up a drug plan because they didn't pick up Part B in the beginning. So it's really critical in terms of one of the key services I see this center offering is through our outreach program. The other things are important, the enrichment, the socialization, the lunches, but we've even seen seniors live without lunches during COVID. But I'd say the outreach counseling and the Medicare counseling, health insurance counseling, as well as our transportation shuttle, those are vital. I think if those things went away, the quality of life for certain seniors in this town, particularly those who either are income strapped or not income strapped, but have a hard time understanding the complexities of health insurance, they benefit from having a good outreach coordinator. And The coordinator we have has 28 years experience. She retired from Belchertown, I think it was back in 2018, and within 6 months, she was picked up because there was a sudden loss of the outreach coordinator here. She passed away rather suddenly, and so Diane Morgan agreed to fill that spot, and then she became interim director while Chloe Kenter was on maternity leave, or whatever that period was. So Diane Morgan should be retired, but because she's good and she likes to help people, we benefit. And one of the things I did in the first 3 months of being here is she was paid a pittance. And compared to what she was paid in Belchertown, which is a very different government, a very different tax base, they have deep pockets. We could never afford to pay her what she was paid there. It was a 40-hour-a-week job. She was making $38 an hour, and she'd be well worth it. But we're at a different pay scale. But I tried to remedy some of that because I wanted to keep her, guarantee I could keep her at least through this year, through 2021, to get her to open enrollment. And it was a very successful open enrollment. The seniors who came to see her and reviewed information and adopted to make changes are going to save an expected $900 in the year on prescription drugs. Now that number could have been bigger, but many people, they can only, the counselor can only advise. They can't tell you to make the change. And many people don't make changes for some good reasons and some not so good reasons. So a good, shy counselor and outreach person really is hungry to find resources for the seniors. Apart from Shine, helping with Western Mass Elder Care for protective services or Meals on Wheels or getting in-home help or helping with bill pay, all sorts of resources and referrals that she can make. And my hope would be is that this spring we start to look to recruit a candidate to take her place. Now she won't be, he or she won't be maybe her experience, we would be lucky, but I'd like that person to mentor under her, so there'd be a bit of an overlap. So that's the key thrust of why I want to reallocate the budget. The other one is, as Chris knows, we filled the combined activity nutrition coordinator's position finally in June. We had a rough start with someone hired in early March right before Chloe went out, and that person wasn't a good fit. And we went and posted the job and interviewed 3 candidates, and we got a great gal, Rachel. Rachel has student loans, so she came to me in early December saying she had been looking in the job market because the student loans are going to come back up to due. So they were supposed to come back up for payment after the end of January. Now Biden administration has extended it 3 months. But she wasn't looking for a job that paid more, it just had more hours, so it would allow her to earn more. And she's been so great for the 6 months in helping get the system open, the center open. It was worth it to me to figure out how can I retain a person like this. And we had unused budget, namely in certain areas. We haven't filled the clerk's position, I think, in 2.5 years. So there was money sitting and reassigned this cycle again. So the end of last year, money got returned quite a bit to the general fund. So we started fiscal year 2022. We still had a budget for clerk, but we've run lean, and we all answer phones, and we all have a busy day. So that money was sitting there unused. And I've got really avid volunteers at this center, whether it's through Friends of the Elderly or others who come here. If need be, and we were pulling our hair out, we could put a volunteer in 2 to 3 days a week to answer phones and help with some of those things so we could concentrate more on the things we felt we were being pulled away from. So we have money in the clerk budget. The transportation wages have largely been fixed since it was fiscal year 2019, and we were always returning budget for that. Our shuttle driver, or drivers, but it's predominantly one driver right now who can barely keep busy. That budget wasn't being exhausted, so I've done some reallocation here. So that's the motivation of what I'm going to propose. So we're eliminating the part-time clerk's position, which, as I said, unfilled for many years, and we've all been pitching in. The budget is, in my opinion, is better used to improve the Council on Aging's earning opportunity for, one, recruiting the outreach coordinator position, both in the very near future, which is the next 2 or 3 months. I've got to start looking to place that ad and looking at who's out there in the field as a candidate, as well as retaining someone like Rachel, who's our activity and nutrition coordinator. There's good news and bad news when you look at the adjacent towns. The bad news is they pay a lot of money and they offer more hours. The good news is those people there are probably sitting in those jobs for a while. So it's not like our staff are going to run to Belchertown or South Hadley. We're comparable to some of the pay in Southwick, but many of these centers, they run with a lot more staff. And I'm not suggesting I want a loaded staff. I believe in having the right number of staff where we're kept busy, we can do our jobs well, not burn out, and not waste money in a small town with, a revenue base to take good care of. So the requested funds to go position by position, I just went off of what was slated for the COA director, not necessarily what I am paid stepping as an interim, but it was set at 52,000. I put the 2% COLA on it to bring it up to 53,400. Now, depending on what happens in this position long term, whether you get somebody more qualified than me, then that might be the maximum. If you get someone with less tenure in the job than, say, I've been holding, then we might come in a little under that. But we're going to earmark that compared to, say, Belchertown, which is at least a 40-hour-a-week job. They're paying $86,000. I don't think that is ever anything to use as a benchmark. But they have a really deep bench, and they have a lot of people on their Council on Aging staff. Okay? So the requested funds for this Council on Aging outreach worker, it's going to reflect that we're going to phase out Diane Morgan, and for fiscal year 2022, the hourly wage is currently at $24.38 as of last July 1. That will become a grade 9 of $25.08 for the limited duration that we have her here mentoring whomever we hire, and a phasing in of a new hire. And I'm going to assume that new hire will come in the same grade, grade 5, but at step 2, roughly $20.79 an hour. Now, if we find someone who's very qualified and they say, I need a little bit more than that, then we'll have to negotiate, okay? I'm requesting that instead of this being, right now it is a 10-hour-a-week job. I want to make it a 15-hour-a-week job, okay? And this does not include the supplementation we get for the wages in this position through the federal Title III B as in boy grant that West Mass Elder Care allows us to apply for every 2 years. And we applied for it back last July, and I wrote in for more hours, and they granted me. So they gave us a doubling of what the center had gotten 2 prior fiscal years ago, okay? So the reason we need this augmentation is I've got to get someone up and running, and I have things that I see the outreach coordinator can't do right now on the 10 hours a week, okay? And paid higher, I would overrun the budget. So there's certain things I'm idling on the back burner, but I'd like to propose that this becomes basically adding 5 more hours on top of its 10 hours. And to do this, I'm basically going to take the wages largely from the unused clerk's position. And that's what we did last July 1, to raise that pay from $18.70 to $24.38, okay? And so the formula I used here, so there'll be 30 hours per pay period, and when we have 2 employees overlapping, the budget is going to allocate between them, okay? And that's to be worked out. I've done a spreadsheet where, and I've gone over it with the current outreach coordinator, and she thinks it's agreeable. So the formula is to calculate a total of $17,374.99 was to take 30 hours times 26.1 pay periods, and the $22.19 an hour is a blend between a Diane Morgan for July 1 wage of $25.08, and presumably being able to bring someone in at a grade 5, step 2 of $20.79, okay? Effective July, okay, that was what I did that last July, to take some of the clerk's budget at that time and raise the annual pay up to $12,662. So the comparison is going from $12,662 up to a proposed $17,375 roughly. The requested funds for the senior lunch coordinator wages, which is half of the job that Rachel McProd is filling, because that's how we have it structured here. Half of your job is activities, and half is the lunch program coordination, okay? This is based on, so in early December, in order to try and make her counter offer to not go to an assisted living position with 40 hours a week, roughly the same, similar hourly, because her wage is blended between the two programs, was I needed to find a way to get her more hours and nudge her wages up a little bit. So starting January 1, for the rest of this fiscal year, we brought her up to $21.25. It was just one step from where she was hired last June. So she was a step 5, now she's a step 6. And this will become a 17.5-hour week job as opposed to 15. So we're adding a total of 10 hours for her between the hat she wears for lunchroom coordinator and activity. Okay? And that made us competitive, and she said, I want to stay here if I can, but I need to earn a little more. And so we were pleased that we brought her close. It wasn't exactly, and it's still further away from, it's still a long commute, but she felt strongly about liking the staff here and working with the seniors that she's got to meet. So the formula for the senior lunch coordinator is $21.25 starting July 1 times 35 hours in a 2-week pay period times 26.1 pay periods in the year for a total of $19,411.87. And by comparison, that had been $14,877 for the current fiscal year. So that's one of the categories where we increased our budget use by taking away from a part-time clerk position, okay? Her other hat is activity coordinator, and this is a salary that's shared with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs. They pay for half that position. So it's a different grade than she is in as lunch coordinator. It's a grade 3, and basically starting January 1, to keep her here, we tweaked the wage on that. So she was a grade 5 now. She was born in grade 4, and starting next July 1, it would be grade 6, an automatic bump. And we added 5 hours per pay period. And then keeping in mind half of this salary is paid for by the state. So the formula used would be a wage of $19.67 an hour times 35 hours every 2 weeks times 26.1 pay periods in a year. All of that divided by 2 is $8,984.27. So that's an area where we took away from clerking a little bit from the part-time wages for the shuttle driver, because we were, the past 3 or 4 years, even pre-COVID, weren't exhausting that budget. It was, at the end of the cycle, returning to general fund, if we could address issues here to make this center run better and keep good staff, I want to have a chance to do that, okay? So the last category is the requested funds for the part-time wages. We're going to be slightly reduced to reflect the trend that shuttle use has not bounced back from pre-COVID days, and the funds are redirected to cover a portion of the town's obligation to pay for the activity coordinator position that I just described. The shuttle driver's budget has remained a constant amount since fiscal 2019, which I mentioned earlier. The CEO has never exhausted it. So the proposal here is, I'd like it to be a 15 hours a week, 30 hours per pay period. The driver will automatically bump up another step in July, which has been there 3.5 years, I believe. It'll be $17.20 an hour times the 30 hours every pay period, so 26.1 pay period. It's going to be $13,473.39. So that's down from what we had done for the prior fiscal year and had budgeted several fiscal years after that. If we look at the total for salary and wages here at the Council on Aging, expense items, it's $112,644.52. And that number, had been 105 and 15, so like 119,926. So right there, it's been reallocated and economized. The last bit, I didn't do much to the expenses because looking at how last fiscal year these accounts exhausted or not, I didn't see a good case to push for them, push them up. I just think I did the cost of living on them. So I'm keeping it on some of them, others I kept flat. Repair and maintenance of office supplies, which is like the copy machine is under warranty, so this would be any other repair and maintenance within the office space. I kept it at $650. I kept repair and maintenance of vehicles the same as the 2022 value of $1,100. I'm not saying that's imprudent because vehicles get older, but so far the blue van has been very reliable. And the wheelchair van is still going, and we don't have a lot of heavy demand on it. It's one of the reasons I didn't put in a capital request for it. It's too rich right now, and with the supply chain delays, I want to idle it. I've had feelers out to the interim fire chief to look at used products, but I haven't gotten any information back on that. So we're going to just go with what we have, and it's running. And Richie Gay always says, it works well, I can handle it. So printing newsletters, we're going to keep that budget the same at $700. Postage, keep the same at $800. The same with office supplies. Meals, mileage, meetings, kept the same at $50. And the requested fund for dues has a couple of key annual dues, so I bumped up that $50 to $400, okay? So the total non-payroll expenses I'm proposing for fiscal year '23 is $4,400. And the sum of the two is basically $116,635.12, and that is a savings of $3,290.88 compared to what's on the books budgeted for the current fiscal year. So largely, I took in COLA and I reallocated what we had and returned a little because I don't see that it's a necessity to have the clerk's position. It's more important that I be able to, depending on how long I'm in this position, I want to make sure the center has the next generation of a good, competent outreach coordinator, preferably with SHINE credentials, but if not, at least see it through to next October's open enrollment with Diane Morgan as a mentor for the new outreach coordinator to learn from. And Diane Morgan could, and I did budget that she could potentially have a role in handling the SHINE appointments next October to early December. And I'd like to make sure there's some stability in the outreach and nutrition. You know, it's tough hiring, somebody new in under a year. It'd be nice to have some longevity. So that was my goal in looking at this and looking at the numbers.
Great. Any questions again?
Actually, a couple. First of all, you mentioned that the COA activity coordinator. Now, that person's doing the clerk's work right now?
What?
That person's doing the work the clerk would do?
We all do, we all pitch in.
Okay.
We all pitch in. We all answer phones, we all sign out medical equipment. We pitch in. If Rachel's busy, I'll take someone to the food pantry. I'll go shopping for food pantry. I try not to. I'm better when it's here, but if it's on the weekend, I can shop for food. So we all pitch in.
So what is the possibility that the clerk's position would be needed in the future?
Well, for fiscal year 2023, I just don't see it, because I actually see the center is still going to be in a semi-state of open and pulling back a bit, just like now. We had so much slated for January. We had a COVID case, and I pulled the plug. So everything in January got suspended. So I don't think we're going to be up to full throttle, even though the fiscal year is going to run from this coming July to the following June. I'll be happy to have people too busy starting January of 2023, because the virus is well behind us and we're really back to the way things used to be. We've lost a lot of people. Our numbers are down. So it's going to take some time for the activity levels to come up. People do age every year. They become 65 or they become 60 and they start checking out their senior center. So I'm okay with the clerk's position staying unfilled for the next fiscal year cycle.
So my concern is that fiscal year 2024 with that clerk's position. Now that we're taking the money from that clerk's position and we're kind of spreading it around to other people. So what happens in 2024 if we need a clerk, but that money's already been allocated towards other staff?
Well, when we get to this same exercise for fiscal year 2024, whoever's in this position, or if it would be me, I'd make the case that I need a little more budget because I returned 3,300 prior year, but I didn't do it willy-nilly to reallocate. There's a reason why. I need an activity and a nutrition coordinator more than I need a clerk.
Okay.
And when I look at what those coordinators make in the surrounding centers, I got to try and make it a good keeper.
And I would.
It's been a fairly low effort compared to the one when I stepped into this job. It was not very good.
And I would agree 100% with you too that, you know, good quality and knowledgeable staff is important. And it's important to keep them. And how we keep that, how we keep retention.
That's right. And
most of that is usually by, you know, wages and how you treat your employees.
That's right.
So,
and as I said, we have some very eager and high-functioning seniors in town who would love to be invited to sit here 5 days a week or 2 days a week in the clerk's desk. And I know maybe people might say, oh, you know, the pluses and minuses to that, but some of them I really would welcome.
and then again, my next question would be more towards the transportation budget. Kind of talking about the past several years, obviously been, you know, with COVID, that's really had I would say, a major impact on that. So, you know, coming out of COVID, maybe not so much, but again, looking forward, 2024, where does that put us?
Okay.
When we're taking from other parts, so, and I agree with you, like I said, as far as the staff and making sure people are paid appropriately, you know, to keep our staff, good staff for our seniors, absolutely. I just want to make sure that when we look towards the future, that 2024, we're not saying, well, now I need this amount of money for this amount of money for that. Kind of want to say we're in the planning stage now, but let's plan so we're not.
I know.
We're not.
So if I could make one modification to what I submitted on December the 23rd, I could say, this is proposal A. Proposal B is, I don't give back 3,300. I keep it in the part-time wages in case the shuttle driver gets super busy. And in case we start being able to do field trips again, where we could have 5 or 6 seniors in the same shuttle van and they're going off to Shelburne Falls to look at the Bridge of Flowers or something.
Yeah, I would honestly like you to keep the $3,000 instead of giving it back, to be honest with you, for that down the road when those things may come about.
And if it's not used, it can go back to the general fund. the end of the
No,
fiscal year.
and again, I want to stress the importance for our seniors.
I just, you know, I'm not a native of Granby, but we turned out 20 years, a homeowner, right, watching the debates and property taxes. I know we don't have a big base, so maybe I'm being too immediate term to say, how sharp can I do this pencil here and achieve what I need and give back and not take too much? Because I know there's going to be other parts of the town that are going to have big asks. So, as to allay your concern, if you decide or make a recommendation to the finance committee that just leave it flat, she's going to use it this way, keep the $3,300 in there in case the shuttle driver is going to get super busy.
Yeah, I think Glenn makes an important part of that, and we're all hoping that things will start getting better after, once this comes down a little bit. And it might be wise to keep that in there, just so, if you do lose transportation here and there.
No, but I think it's important too, even if it's in the budget for other things where, you know, like you said, you could have a person that's in a position that may be looking somewhere else, however, you need to come up with an extra $2,000 to keep that person. And
Well,
sometimes,
that's exactly what I just
Right,
did.
right, and that's
What
the
I did.
things-
I was going to have to
Yeah.
start hiring for January 1.
yeah, and that's why I said, to me, trying to figure a way to keep good quality, knowledgeable staff, retention is important. That's, you know, that's part of it. Obviously, you know, someone's sometimes looking to make more money to help themselves out. So we need to be prepared, I think, down that. So again, I think keeping that money in your cash flow, if you will, is important.
So the interesting thing is, one of the other important reasons to try and take the outreach coordinator job from 10 to 15, and then there's a small augmentation to the Title III federal grant we get. Because I have 3 hours. So right now, Diane Morgan, the 10 becomes like 14 a week, right? 14 hours a week or 10 is not attractive to anyone other than someone who's probably either already got a big income in the household or they're retired and they've got the desire to give and they've got some knowledge and they don't mind the 10 hours. But there's going to be this balance between how many hours and what pay. So I'm assuming 15 hours, and if I can find somebody who's bright enough and wants to learn and would come in at, say, the grade 5, step 2 of $20.39, I'd be really pleased. Okay? So there's the balance between hours and wage that make earnings, and if we want experience, you kind of want it all, but you most often pay for what you get.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's how I thought through this process, and I appreciate, Glenn, your point of leaving a little wiggle room.
And I think it's a nice prepared budget, and really just publicly, I want to thank you for the work you've done.
You're very welcome. You're welcome. It's been lovely to give back to the town and meet so many people that I knew their names, but I didn't know them. And it's vital. I mean, I look around at the other centers and, you know, what they're doing, but the seniors here they love the center. I'm sorry that in the last year and a half, Granby's lost so many of its elders. It's lost elders, but it's told noticeable here. Okay.
There's more coming up.
Oh.
Your elders.
Yes, it's a demographic.
Every year.
I'm getting there.
Yes, we all are.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thanks again, appreciate it.
I want you to shut that current. I put the current on for you guys earlier. You want me to shut it? You can shut it.
Yeah, I got one.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right, next up is, Building Department, Greg Briggs. Sit up there, please. Good afternoon, sir. You can start whenever you're ready.
Start.
Tell us a little bit about your budget that you got planned here.
Well, I was asked to give a 2% increase over the last year. The numbers are still trying to figure out what the net overall effect of COVID has been on inspections, because we are up, building inspections, we are up by almost 25% of the number of permits issued. It's not clear to me. I haven't done a breakdown to see whether those are in smaller permits like insulation or window replacement versus, although smaller versus larger being houses or commercial properties. I know that there were 3 or 4 more houses permitted last year than had been permitted in the years before. And again, it's not clear to me where these numbers lie. The price of materials was up so high, I couldn't see how people were actually affording to build the houses. The contractors were certainly screaming that they were went out there. So, for instance, if you look at the electrical wages, the wages are off significantly versus 2 years ago. It was under $10,000, or it was almost $16,000 the year before, whereas gas inspections were way up. Now, there were actually more electrical permits issued last year than the year before, and fewer gas permits. So whether because there's a 2 or 3 year lag in the inspection dates, it's not clear to me whether there's just a lot of catch-up going on in some of the work. And so I guess my net goal is to just not exceed the budget as presented. A lot of it, I don't have any control over it. Sometimes there's work that comes in that has to get done, and sometimes there's other times that you get into a slow period. But it seems like it's working, and I don't know what kind of markers to follow to see whether it's getting strained or not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Okay, did you stick to your numbers in the last row for 23 or all just a 2%?
Just a 2%. And so, for instance, in past years, before I became the commissioner, there was a wage category to cover the commissioner's status, which was coming from South Hadley. And I don't know where that drops into this or has dropped out of this. And again, the electrical numbers have dropped, and what's actually gone out, is that going to pick up? Go back to more what is budgeted, I don't know. I'm comparing what other towns use for permitting costs, so what a permit costs, for instance, versus the expenditure when it gets inspected. And in some ways, the GRANBY system seems to be a little bit higher than most, but in most categories, it doesn't charge what other towns charge, which seems to be part of the flow, it would seem. I mean, as long as costs are getting covered, that's the name of the game, right? There's talk in some of the inspectors' meetings about what happens if towns start generating a lot more money than they expend in their inspections department. I think Amherst would be a good example. Amherst is 3 or 4 times the size of GRANBY, from what I understand. If they have 6 inspectors, and there's like 12 or 13 people in their inspection staff. No wonder their permit costs are so high. And they charge for everything. Granby doesn't have to, or apparently doesn't want to. I don't know how often these things are debated at levels that are, that I'm not privy to. And what would you base, would the select board base it on anything more than whether the department was actually meeting its own ends?
Well, the revenue you're taking in is inspections, right? I mean,
Sure.
and permits.
Yeah. Which,
I mean, we pay inspectors, but they're being paid by whoever needs inspection.
yes,
Yeah, so, I mean,
So the inspectors, when they go out and inspect, is there a set fee that they make on each
Yes.
time they go out,
Yeah.
depending on what they're
yes.
inspecting?
Electrical inspectors and the gas inspector, I think I'll make $35 per inspection.
Okay. And that's what these numbers are adding up to, what we paid out to the inspectors, correct?
That's fully what I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I don't think we want to gouge and make $1 million on the back of our town
Right.
residents here, so I agree with you.
Right.
Then I know working with Chris asked for you to look at a 2% increase over last year's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, for some reason, the past year has been a pretty good year for building, I think, in town, even though, like I said, the cost of materials and things like that, but it's really didn't slow people down too much.
It didn't slow anybody down. And in fact, since probably late spring, May or something, a lot of the Mass Save has come back to us. So Mass Save, with their energy retrofits, probably
Oh, yeah.
does 15 or 20% of the permits issued in town. Well, for a while, they weren't doing any, because nobody was letting them in their house.
Right.
And, and so I know in speaking to some of the inspectors, I don't necessarily want to jump out there and do as many inspections as I can. If somebody needs an inspection done and they come and get me, I'm going to go do it, but I don't want to walk into a bunch of strange houses where there's a reasonable chance I might get sick. Okay, play it safe. I mean, what can you do besides ask the people? We're not privy to any information about who actually gets or has COVID. Tonight, for instance, some guy called me up, he said, I want you to do my insulation inspection. I said, okay, we can arrange that, I can probably come out tomorrow. He goes, but I gotta tell you that I was with somebody that's been diagnosed with COVID. I don't know that I have it, but I said, thanks for the information, I really appreciate you giving me that. You're one of the few people that have actually come forward with that kind of information. And he goes, I can send you pictures of it. He's a tradesman, it's his own house. He sent me pictures, it looks fine. I said, a lot of times, if I can't be there in a day or two, I expect that people are going to take pictures of their work anyways and provide them to me, just so that there's some documentation of what goes on. So yeah, they get paid per inspection. The fees are based on the anticipated number of inspections. If the number of inspections goes up, there's re-inspection fees added on top of the original inspection. It's all meant to balance itself out. There's a certain portion of permit fees that are paid that nobody ever calls for an inspection. A lot of times, like with the installation inspections, I get something in the mail, I process the permit application, usually send something back to the contractor, I send a building card and a copy of the permit to the homeowner, one, so that they're aware of what's going on, because Mass Save isn't always the best in communicating. At least 2 or 3 times a month, somebody will call up and say, I just got this inspection card in the mail, but the work was done a week and a half ago. Okay, and it's for something trivial like air sealing the plate at the bottom of the house, for instance. Okay, are you happy with what they did? Well, I don't know, I can't really see half of it. Okay. Do you need me to come out and take a look at it? No, they seemed to know exactly what they were doing. They came in and did all their work and processed it through. And this is a conversation that's happening at the state level. How do you hold the contractors in Mass Save particularly accountable? And so now there's a third-party inspection that gets paid for out of the system too, so that in order for the contractor to get paid, randomly, they have to call in this inspector, and the inspector goes in without them knowing if it's going to get inspected or not, and goes through and looks at their work. So there's a certain number of fees that are paid where there isn't any inspection. This happens with electrical permits, and it happens with gas permits and plumbing permits also. If somebody pulls a permit, nobody ever calls for inspection. It's a process that after 2 years, the paperwork gets forwarded, the certain amount of paperwork gets put into the permanent file to show that there was a permit pulled for insurance reasons mostly, I think. And that goes on. So it seems as though the costs are being carried by what's coming in. And does the select board expect anything else? I know, I get the impression, I live in Amherst, I get the impression that they're trying to generate as much money as they can. And it doesn't have anything to do with the benefit of the residents. And they charge between $25 and $40 to site a dumpster on your property if you're going to get rid of a bunch of trash. I don't think that would fly anywhere.
Yeah. Not well.
Not well.
Not well.
They might be throwing the dumpsters at me.
I got it, yeah. No, I think they're doing a fine job. I don't have any problems with any of this, do you, Glenn?
No, I think that, like you said, just from the get-go, we looked at a 2% increase in the budget over last year. And it said, some of your revenue is from the inspection fees and permit fees. That covers part of the budget. So, yeah, I don't really have any concerns with the
So one of the
budget
things that I
itself.
can't tell is, for the annual report, I generate how much revenue is actually generated by the building department, by electrical permits, by gas permits, whatever, and I come up with a dollar figure. And I look at these numbers here, and they're reasonably close to it, but I can't tell whether wages here includes things like retirement funds or health insurance or any number of...
No, because you could have years where you may not have a lot of construction going on in town.
Sure.
Those happen. But we still have a building inspector. That person's still being paid to be here.
Sure.
Because it's a position that is filled by the town. So, sometimes, yes, depending on, like last year was a good year for a lot of construction that was happening in town. If you drive around, you see a lot of homes that were built. You see a lot of people did some, improvements and upgrades to their current homes. So then again, you see sometimes, not every year is like that. When the economy's not doing good, right? People aren't breaking out permits, people aren't building houses, but we still have a building inspector, right? So, sometimes I would say it balances itself out. I don't think it actually balances itself out, but there's, there's good years and not so good years.
Yeah.
Just the way it goes,
That's like...
Yeah, I think that's, you look at the previous years, just the fluctuation of the, different budgets for the past several years. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
You too, take care, Greg.
We're running a little behind, 5:50. Police and Dispatch, Chief O'Grady. Come on up, please.
Police, or when would you?
Yeah, let's go again.
Okay. So police was, this year I tried to, again, with 2%, I tried to keep the expenses within that 2% range. The only issue I had was, we have a new, computer system that searches cell phones.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
And there's a Cellbrite license that cost $4,300 that they neglected to tell us about when we first got that. That's the system that we got through the burn grant last year. So while I was figuring my my expenses, that is within 2% except for that $4,200 that I had to, I kept it down, but it was like $4,200 in excess of the 2% because of the Cellbrite license. When it comes to salary, that was a tough one to figure out this year too, because we have the cops hiring grant. So we have an extra officer that will be having fiscal year 2023. So I added that in, as well as this is the last year of the contract with the police department, and they have a wage adjustment and a 3% COLA this year. And one of the officers also went up a step in his pay grades. So just the salary adjustments alone for that was $25,033. So that's just the base salary from last year. And then we had the shift differentials was almost $2,000, and the potential for 3 officers to get a degree, higher degree that they have, or one of the new officers hired is actually working towards his master's degree. So there's $8,700 in potential increases for new degrees. Other than that, I tried to keep the training budget about the same, or is the same. We're still in the up in the air on what we have to do with whether we're going to do a bridge academy or a full-time academy for the new hire. And again, uniforms is affected by that. The criminalistic services is where that Cellbrite equipment is. That's why you see that large increase there from 10,687 to 15,2. And then again, with a couple of full-timers, they have their incentive is different than a part-timer when it comes to the physical agility testing, as well as the electronic stipends that they get. So that's why you see some of those adjustments, as well as the longevity numbers increase $40 per employee for the people that are entitled to it.
Entitled to part of the contract?
That's part of the contract, correct, yes. So that's why you see that there's like a $92,000 increase from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2023. That's within all of those adjustments that are by contract.
Okay. How many guys came over, did the Bridge Academy? 2?
We have one that is completed, which hopefully if all goes well, they'll actually they'll get his exemption on next Wednesday, the 19th. I have another one that just has to do some tests, and then we still have 3 more officers that are going to be going for it. One more part-timer is going for it, basically go through his full-time employment at the Hampshire County Jail. So he's going for it. So we'll have 3 bridge this year, 1 bridge fiscal year 2023, and 1 bridge fiscal year 2024.
And that's Yeah, that's all the.
That's all. That'll be
That's all of
everybody.
them, right? So
That'll be everybody.
what's, how many guys do we got now? Including those. Let's assume that they're gonna do the bridge.
So,
again.
well, that's, again, that's, if you look too, I didn't point that out, the part-time wages I dropped by like $22,000 because we're gonna be down to 3 part-time officers. So we'll have 12 full-timers and 3 part-timers.
Okay,
So, that, and then trying to speculate the overtime and things like that with shift filling. A lot of the times we use part-timers, but we're gonna be down to 3. I don't, I tried to use a projection for what this year was looking like, added 2%, and I think we can work within that. But again, like I said, so we took like 22,000 from the part-time budget is down from fiscal year 2022. Because again, we're down to 3 officers.
I don't know. And that's enough to cover every shift?
Yep. Because again, we also have that, we're hiring that, one of those officers. Well, we have 4 right this moment. One of those is gonna become full-time with that cops hiring grant once we figure out how and when we can do that. And then we'll be down to 3. So we'll actually have a little bit more coverage than we had prior. And with that, there'll also be the ability that possibly like the first person off, we don't have to fill. We'll have I don't want to say an extra, but we'll have like, with the cops grant, we're trying to have 3 people on the road so that they can follow up on
Okay,
crisis and things like that. If one person is out, we won't necessarily have to fill that right away. We can, that's covered by, we can run with 2 people.
with the supervisor and 2 officers, right?
Sometimes it may just, well, that's what it's going to be, but if one of them is off, it may be just a supervisor and an officer.
Okay,
So,
got it. The old days.
yeah.
So adding the officer over this, for the next fiscal year, over this prior year, that's cut back on the part-time salary?
I'm sorry?
Adding well, not adding, but we did add an officer this year, right? Into the.
We did,
a
we're in the
full-time?
process of that, yeah.
Right.
So, he actually was partly figured into this year as being a full-timer at some point,
Right.
once we figured out everything that was going on in this department. So, we're actually cutting back 1 officer, and then, like I said, 1 officer is like roughly $9,800, and then I took some more money from that, figuring that all these people, they can't cover all these shifts, so I moved some of that to overtime, because
Yeah.
if we have to fill a shift, more than likely it's gonna be overtime.
Got it.
So more or less, is that the deduction in the part-time wages?
Correct.
In the increase in the overtime budget?
Correct.
All right.
The increase in the overtime is kind of like a projection, and then I figured we could take some of that. We took that from part-time, because
Yeah.
we just don't have the officers,
Right.
you know?
Yep. So you have to cover it one way or another.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
On your capital, are you asking for a cruiser?
We are, but that doesn't go on here, that goes on, that falls under a different capital, that goes for capital improvements. This capital here, like, last year was $5,100.
Yeah.
That's $1,000 for weapons, and last year we had to buy a new copier, $4,100.
Yeah, I saw that.
So now this year it's just $1,000, that's for weapon repairs. That falls into this capital here, but we did ask for a new cruiser, correct?
Okay. You got anything else, Mike?
Actually, you mentioned the cruiser. Are we looking at a hybrid?
We have a hybrid, and this is, this
The new-
this
for the
year,
new
this
one?
year, yep, we just put the new one in service last Friday. It is a hybrid.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a learning curve. I mean, it's a little strange to get in there, turn the key, and
Yeah.
not have anything kind of happening, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden things just start happening. So they're learning it. So yep, this fiscal year 2022's was a hybrid. We have it.
Yep.
And fiscal year 2023, we
Yeah,
asked for a
hybrid.
hybrid as well.
Okay.
I think we have to be still without that element green community.
Right, yep.
Yeah. Anything else, Mike?
I don't, I know, yesterday was Law Enforcement Day, is that correct?
Yes, I saw that, yeah.
So
Good night, boys, yeah.
acknowledge yourself, Kevin, and the police department for the work you've done throughout the year, obviously,
you,
especially
appreciate
a tough
it.
year.
Appreciate it.
You want to do dispatch?
So, yeah, then on the dispatch, again, you'll see there was, the wages were up 26,000, 15.3 of that, or actually 15.6 of that is basically, again, the wage adjustments, the COLA and shift differential. Again, trying to speculate what we're gonna need for coverage because we're down to those 3 part-time officers and the officers fill in, you know, when people are off. I had to try to figure in what I projected what this year's overtime was gonna finish out at and added 2% to that just to cover. The only other increase, I tried to stay again within that 2%. We had 2 issues. One was we had a malware program that we use to protect our server and firewall. So that's $420. And then our CAD system that we use for dispatching, that went up $842, which is almost a 6% increase. It's one of those costs that we just have no control over. They provide the service and they tell us what we're paying for it.
How many dispatchers you got?
We have 4 full-time dispatchers.
Nice.
So then the part-time officers and then patrolmen will come in as well. Again, there was a slight increase, like $80 in longevity. Again, by contract, I have 2 people that are receive longevity and got increases. Other than that, under the telephones, I added 2% to that as well as the teletype. Office and miscellaneous supplies I kept the same, uniforms is the same. And when you look at, the only thing that does if you look at the part-time wages, we call it part-time wages, but that could also just be a officer that is working the desk on a regular shift. We try to control how they're paid. So that increase does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a part-time patrolman sitting there. There could be a patrolman, there could be a sergeant, whoever sits at the desk, and that's how there's one shift that is covered.
Yep.
Because we have 21 shifts and 20 are covered by full-time dispatchers. We just try to figure out what that other slot is going to be. And we call it part-time. It's always how it's kind of been, but that did increase a little bit, but that's because of the officers and just trying to speculate where we're going to be.
Just about 3/4.
Anything else?
No, I'm good. I think it's straightforward.
Sorry, I'm late, guys.
Finally is the dog officer budget.
Yes.
That was pretty straightforward. I put a 2% increase under each line item.
Who is our dog officer?
Gordon Landry right now.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
Says copier, R&M.
We have to pay, there's like it's like a contract to have them service it.
And that's the same for R&M cruisers, is that what the,
R&M repair and maintenance is cruisers. the copier has its own separate through dispatch.
They're both R&M?
I'm sorry?
They're both R&M?
Yeah, repair and maintenance.
Oh, okay. Like that name of a company or something?
Yeah, no, that's repair and maintenance. It's
Oh, like
repair and maintenance for cruising.
two different people, that doesn't get it, but it's companies. That's kind of weird.
Oil change at the same time, so.
Welcome, Madam Chairman. You got any questions for him on the dog?
No. I didn't have any questions on this. I had questions on one that I missed, but not on this one.
All right, anything else, Glenn?
No, that would be R&M stands for.
There you go.
He's not gonna get his car changed, there's
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
You too.
Sorry I interrupted.
No, it's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Welcome.
Miss me?
You ready?
I'm ready to go. Give her a second. Whenever you're ready. You guys ready now?
Yeah. Yeah, what's that?
You ready now?
Yeah.
All right, you're on.
Okay. I never introduced you before, so I'm just, basically,
Me either, so.
you either, okay. Basically, obviously here to present the budget for fire and EMS. The changes, that was just made was mainly on, personnel.
Okay.
I did some minor changes to adapt the changes for the personnel, subtracted areas in EMS, and obviously fire was increased much because, I don't know if you realize our budget's divided by 75-25. 75 out of fire budget and 25 out of EMS budget. The increased change that we wanted was for 3 more additional full-timers. The 3 additional full-timers would have 24 hours, 7 days a week, double paramedic. Because right now, currently, we have 5 members. 5 members that are, 2 are officers, and then, of course, we have 3 firefighter paramedics. With that schedule, we have coverage for full-time will be an officer rotates during the day. I don't know if 4 on, 4 off. The other paramedic during the day is 4 on, 4 off as well. The other 2 are 2 days and 2 nights. So it actually opens up for 4 nights not covered by a full-timer. And then we've been using, over the years, we've been using our per diemers and on-call staff. Recently, I don't know if it's because of COVID or just the way the emergency system is going. Not a lot of people want to work anymore, so when they want a day off, unfortunately, they call out on our side because either their full-time job either has them do overtime or they just want a day off because they work all the time because the EMS system is very short all across the board. The other changes I made besides the personnel is I made the adjustments for uniforms because of that. The other thing I did is because I wasn't quite sure where we're going with this, I increased my intercepts.
Commissioner, can I interrupt you for 1 second? You keep talking about change in personnel.
Yes.
Can you explain what the change in personnel is?
Okay, thank you, because I'm not, yeah.
Okay?
Yes. Thank you very much.
What I mean by change in personnel is adding additional 3 people.
So
instead of
hiring
having-
3 more people.
Hiring 3 more people than the 5 we have, so we have a total of 8.
8 full-timers.
8 full-timers. Thank you for the correction. So it would be the 8 positions, so 3 additional on top of the 5, would have double paramedics, 24 hours shift, well, it'll be a 12-hour shift, 12-hour shift, 7 days a week, and we would have a paramedic, double paramedic coverage. What's I like about the double paramedic, if, you know, someone is sick or called off, I still have a paramedic, so we won't go down a truck at level, down to a basic or even not have one at all. Because we would have a paramedic on both sides of the shift.
So the 3 new positions are gonna go EMS or firefighter EMS?
They're
Firefighter,
both-
paramedic.
They're supposed to be, well, we would like paramedic, because that's the whole point of having a double paramedic. It makes it easier in the job, serious calls, having 2 paramedics on. And we want fire training because that's the other hit heavy that we've had problems with, is obviously with time and everything else, people have experienced that they don't want to do this anymore, they don't want to volunteer. Actually, I just had another one resign because his interests have changed and he didn't want to volunteer anymore at this time. Since August, I've had 20 people resign. And out of the 20, I was able to replace 6.
So does that ever leave the town without coverage?
It's actually left the town without EMS coverage
That's what I mean, yeah, sorry.
a few times. Recently, 3 times in the past month.
In your proposal, this would eliminate that ever happening?
Yes. This number, the number that we came up with was 8, is to sustain the service that Granby is looking for fire and EMS. Because of, you know, obviously we look for, as the fire chief, the interim fire chief right now, or anyone in this position knows our job is for protect reliability and for safety of the residents. And this is guaranteed, nothing's ever guaranteed, but this is hopes that it would always provide ALS coverage 24/7. And having the firefighter paramedic train is what we're looking for, is, for example, is we've unfortunately had to wait for people to come from home before a truck can even respond to calls. And that's a delay in response, which we don't like that,
If
obviously.
you're having a heart attack, that's an issue.
Yeah.
So with the coverage that wasn't there, where nobody was covering, how much of a liability concern is that for the
Well,
town?
if we don't have coverage on the EMS side, the liabilities, we could lose our license as an ALS provider. I called and done some research, and through Western Mass emergency medical offices,
Yep.
they stated that it's a huge liability of not having our license as ALS as we promised the residents we would have. I just didn't have the staffing to fill those shifts, so we would be down a truck or the ambulance service.
Does that open the town up to,
Oh, it does open up the town for a liability because
lawsuit.
we, as a town, we said we would provide this service and we don't, and there would be a delay if it comes from another town. And that's only if they're available, because it has happened that we've called twice of other towns, and we had to call Ludlow, and of course that is an 8 miles, so that's a 15-20 minute response.
Well, it's not preferable. Are there any towns that you know of that are BLS only?
Chicopee?
So Chicopee is not an ALS?
No, they actually have another company coming in. They're just BLS.
Up my way, Turner's.
Yeah, I'm trying to, ones I know around my area, I didn't know, Turner's is another one. So I think Belchtown's ALS, Amherst is ALS, South Valley District 1 is ALS.
Two is
BLS. Chicopee is BLS. I was just thinking what is around here. Ludlow is ALS. I can keep going further up.
no?
Okay.
No, that's okay.
No,
I was just curious.
So with these 3 new people, and hopefully they're paramedics,
Yes,
that would stop this issue with this no coverage, right? If you get them?
yes.
And with the 3 new positions, what's the total increase in the budget?
The 3 positions. She put it in here.
Here it is. Okay. For fire changes, the increase for the budget for wages for full-time would be 146,747.
46, 747?
146,746. 7, excuse me. I rounded it up. And on the EMS side, it's 48,915.
So about 150,000.
Correct for both.
No, it's more
No,
than that.
more than that.
It's almost
It's,
200.
191, 953.
200,
Yeah, 190.
60,
Yeah.
60, about 63,000 per employee.
Yes. And the reason why the EMS budget would, you seem like, well, why is the EMS only like 48 and then the fire is 146? By removing the on-call personnel and the on-call EMT, that budget can go ahead and be used towards the additional new hire. And that was $50,000 that I removed out of my EMS budget and just transferred it to make up the difference in wage for a full-timer.
Okay, so you're basically saying what we would pay in on-call and potentially overtime?
No, the on-call runs and on-call EMTs. How that works is when I have an EMT who is on call from home, and they get paid $30 a night. And then when they would come in to do a call, they get paid per hour.
Okay, so they get 30 regardless of whether they come or not, just for agreeing to be,
Right.
okay.
That's from like last year's budget. Yes. Because we also had a problem of the EMTs not working. Because, you know, working for $30 an hour, a night is just like, so we transferred that this year because of the lack of coverage. We paid them per hour starting in December. To make sure we have EMT coverage.
What does that come out? So someone's covering for a night. What does that end up costing if you're paying them per an hour now?
Okay. For an EMT that covers just an EMT with no firefighter background, which is usually who covers, is $19.50 an hour. And the shifts are 12-hour shifts.
So we used to pay someone $30, now we're paying over 200?
Well, $30 for each night that they wanted to respond and have coverage, and then we pay them per hour. So if an ambulance call comes in, they get automatic 2 hours, and they would get paid their $19 an hour.
But someone who's covering is not being paid $19.50 an hour just to sit home?
No.
Okay, that's what I...
No,
Okay, all right.
When I pay them per hour, they're
Yeah.
required to be at the station and do station duties.
Perfect, okay,
Okay.
that's what I was missing, that's
Sorry.
fine. Now it makes much more sense.
Oh, yeah, no. I said
all right.
the same thing. You're at the station, you guys do duties just like we do during the day, so.
So adding the 3 which is hopefully a paramedic positions, will, I guess, balance everything off, where you're not gonna require a lot of overtime?
No, besides the regular vacation and people sick
Yep.
that we don't, there should be no reason to, because we also still have our per diem staff that still want experience and whatnot, who would cover for someone who's out and,
Yep.
but obviously for union there, they have their right of first refusal for overtime. My thought process with this was, with the 8 personnel, a total of 3 hires from what I have now, the town doesn't have to make an adjustment on personnel and until we grow or some bizarre thing occurs. Because we would be where, there should be no reason to change unless some bizarre thing occurs.
Yeah.
That should just suffice for the town for years.
So, adding the 3 positions,
Yes.
is that offset somewhere else? So is any of the $146,000, that being offset by, like, you know, because you're not paying overtime? You won't be paying less overtime?
That was my goal, is to pay out less overtime by hiring a full-time person.
I understand that.
Maybe I'm not
No,
understanding your question.
no, and I'm understanding on both sides. I'm just saying, where do we show that, okay, so last year, and I'm just throwing out numbers, so last year we paid $100,000 in overtime.
Right.
Well, adding these 3 new positions, we'll probably end up paying out $30,000 in overtime to cover for vacations and things like that. So it offsets, like, it's not, is it adding a true $146,000 to the budget? Or are you taking away money somewhere else?
I understand.
Okay,
And I don't have a number for you with that right now.
okay.
Now I understand, but I don't have it.
But there's gotta be something somewhere, because if we're adding
Well,
full-time in, we gotta be subtracting from somewhere else.
Well, yes. But right now, prior to me stepping into this role, the overtime is beyond what was budgeted for from last year. Because of the fact that I was no longer there, so that spot was sent out to full-timers, so that's 48 hours of overtime that was handed out since August. And so I already know the budget wasn't prepared for that.
48 hours per week, you're talking?
48 hours per week. So you had overtime for 6 months, 48 hours that went out every week for overtime. And I already know our budget was not prepared for that. So I was looking for the future, saying that I kept our overtime budget as is, because in my eyes, we shouldn't be using it unless some bizarre, just regular routine vacations and sick time. Did I answer your question?
Somewhat. You told me you spent a lot of money in overtime this year. That wasn't planned,
I did, which is true.
Not you, no.
More than her,
Right.
the department.
But there is, like I said, there's a cost savings
Yeah.
on one side, because you're not gonna be paying out that amount of overtime. However, there will be an increase in the budget, because you do have full-time employees, and also the benefits, the costs that go with those full-time employees.
Right.
But also the benefits of having a full-time
Yes.
employee, as far as the paramedics and for coverage and so on and so forth.
Can you get us that figure?
Well, right now I know, for the benefits on top of the actual wage is 40,000. The only reason I know that is I'm applying for a SAFER grant. I don't know if you know, a SAFER grant is a federal grant, I don't know if we'll get it, but a federal grant to assist for 36 months to pay for new employees. And I have to show why we need the firefighter coverage. And so I'm applying for a grant to save the town for at least 36 months until we can adjust what we need to get to the 8 positions, because obviously we have to take over after 36 months.
I think it would be helpful, Chief, just so that people do see that, as you're looking to increase a budget of 146,000 plus for 3 new staff. However, there is a reduction in overtime. Like you said, this year is kind of a little out of whack because it wasn't planned on that. But in the past years, probably what you paid for, you know, overtime and there'll probably be a reduced amount of time and for, people, for call-ins and stuff like that, if you have a permanent staff member there. So that's kind of, if you can kind of show, well, you know what, on this side, yes, we're looking to add 3 staff.
Right.
However, there is a cost savings on this, so that $146,000 is really costing us $50,000, not $146,000.
When I did it without the extra, you know, the insurance and the benefits and everything else, when I did the math out for that, for the difference, just on wage difference, see, I came up with like $60,000 and now I can't find my numbers. Just from wage difference.
Between not having them and having the new positions.
Correct. From with my 5 positions that I have currently and adding additional 3, for my whole entire overall budget, it was a difference of $60,000.
Come on.
But I didn't include the overtime that that had accrued from this year to show the offset.
And that's not fair, because like you said, there was additional overtime that really wasn't budgeted for because of, you know, because of, like you said, your position and moving different positions.
Right, if you look at her ambulance budget, she has 2 line items, on-call runs and on-call EMT. Those those added up to $50,000 in FY '22. FY '23, she's not budgeting for any of that. So there's 50 grand right there.
And that's what I was talking about,
Yeah.
there's gotta be, there is an offset somewhere, so it's not,
Yes.
Yes.
not, and I understand that, but I was saying if we put the budget, to the public, but to people, so they understand that you're truly not looking for an additional close to $150,000, because there is cost savings on the other side.
Yes.
Just got
So-
a text, Jeff.
So the 8 full-time staff would be firefighters and,
Firefighter, paramedic.
okay. Does that include the deputy chief and chief?
Yes, the additional 8 altogether includes the 2 officers that are during the day.
Okay.
So it would be additional, like I said, the 3, so we already have 3, so we'll make it 6 firefighter paramedics, and then 2 officers, which would make it 8.
Sorry, my brain is just, you can probably see my brain trying to work, and it's smoking at this point. So, with the addition of 3 new firefighter paramedics, that would leave us coverage 7 nights a week.
Yes.
To paramedics.
And who are also fire trained, so it also.
If there's, right.
So it gets a truck with a driver and a pump operator who's able to work.
Okay. I'm just trying to,
Yes.
I was trying to do it in all scenarios, and it's been a day. Okay.
So in essence, Jen, okay, their shift is 4 on, 4 off.
Yes, that's
Okay.
what I was trying to.
4 on, 4
4
off. You'll have 2 on during the day, 2 on at night for 4 days.
Yep,
That's 4 people. Then when they're off and you have your second shift of people, 2 on the day, 2 at night. That's another 4, comes to the 8 employees that she's proposing.
I had the calendar, but it got deleted off my computer to show you guys.
now see, I need the pretty little,
Circles and arrows. And
I do, I
a
need to
paragraph
just-
on the back detailing what each one's about.
yeah, I'm a visual person.
That's about this restaurant.
I'm a visual person.
I was concerned about the liability for the town with the lack of coverage on several nights recently.
I had one more question. Oh. My question actually goes back to that grant that you had mentioned.
Yes,
Now you said it was for firefighters
yes,
and that you had to show why Granby needed them.
correct.
Now here's my question, and it's
Yeah.
probably going to sound really, really bad. Would we be, I know that we're looking for firefighter paramedics so that we have both sides of that spectrum covered. But we seem to have more medical calls than we do fire calls, so would that put us not in the line of we needed more firefighters?
No, it doesn't mean that. Across the board, all fire departments, majority of the calls now are EMS. They're all ambulance related.
Right.
That's actually across the board completely. But I also know from being here and then looking at our numbers of response, time response, and it's the fire side that are usually the ones that's we're lacking of, more than the EMS side. The time we have for EMS is we had a few nights with no coverage at all, which is the liability. Fire, we just have a longer response.
And that's because we're mostly call force.
Exactly. And because a lot of our guys, like I said, I had 20 guys resign, I'm starting out with a lot of fresh and new guys, and I have equipment over $1 million worth of equipment. So I want to make sure the person can operate and function, and working with that piece every day is where you become more proficient.
Okay.
Is there qualifications to drive the pumper out or
Yes.
any of the trucks?
Oh, yeah, there's a class that we give and then training, but that takes a long time as well. And then, but the thing is, you have to return to keep your skills up. And we only have so much training a year that we can have everybody be proficient at. So they have to come on their own. It doesn't happen too often. Because as you know, life gets in the way. Everyone has families or other obligations.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if the need was based on number of calls on the fire side, because I know that those are much lower than on our EMS side.
I'll give you an example of the question from my grant writer, because they asked me to fill out some things, and they want to know, are we facing a new risk? And I believe we are, from the fact that my call volume has decreased and the experience had decreased.
Okay.
So I believe we're facing a new risk at our fire department. That's why I want to add and have assistance for 3 additional personnel. One of the other questions they've also asked is how often do we have 4 on a truck? We get 3. And then they asked how often we have through N95, I got that one. Yeah, NFPA, 1710 is regulations that having a minimum of 4 members on a crew to go into a burning building. Usually have 2 in, 2 out, so that way you always have someone to help you get out. We don't always have that. We have to wait for the other engine to come, or South Hadley, Belchtown to come and respond. And I had to look up those numbers, and their response is anywhere from 10 to 11 minutes. From the South Hadley side, a little longer from Belchertown side. our own trucks are, for a second truck is also around that time frame, for a second truck. So we figured if we already had 2 personnel who are already trained, the 2 people who do show up early enough, and then we would have our 4 personnel, which would suffice the NFPA 1710.
I think she's gotten everything I had.
Same.
I'm all set.
Look, good, you did fine.
Thanks, Steve.
You did fine. Wasn't that scary now, was it, Chief?
Only a little.
Only a little? But you answered them perfectly, so.
Well, I tried to be prepared to make sure you guys had everything you wanted.
You're good to go.
All right, I just want to talk about a couple things with the board before you adjourn. Okay. First item is South Hadley Water District. They have a meeting for January 20th. Can this board make that meeting with them?
Was that Thursday?
That's a Thursday,
Thursday.
yes.
I will be there.
What time is that? What time?
I don't remember what time it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the agenda.
So I'll let Mr. Sear know that all the board members, Rick, can you make it?
I don't have anything on the 20th. Thought I did, but
If you do, cancel it.
I was bored.
No, you don't have, no, you have the South
We got it
Hadley.
the 18th, yeah. Maybe
Water.
Yeah, mark it in. What time?
Once I talk to Mr. Sear, I'll find a time
Okay.
and get it, email you
Yep.
with it, okay?
No, I'll definitely.
The other topic is, in light of the pandemic that's going through the town of Granby, it seems, I'd like to get permission from the board to lock the doors for our town halls and do by appointment only, to try and mitigate the potential of the spread of COVID amongst our employees. Not tell them they can stay home, have them still come here, but basically lock the doors and make sure that they have to ring a doorbell or make appointments to come into the offices to do business.
Let me ask you, what's the difference of having someone make an appointment or just showing up at the door?
You can control the people who are coming in, because we can ask the questions again, have you been diagnosed? You know, before, when COVID first came out, we were asking the question, have you been diagnosed? Have you been around people? We go back to that style of having people come in to make appointments.
Do you have a sign posted on with the questions?
We did back during the original pandemic.
Yep.
We can put that sign back up, as far as I'm concerned.
If there's new regulations with the CDC. which
Right.
Makes things totally different.
And I just want to do it for like maybe 30 or 60 days, just to get through this bump, because I believe they're saying this Omicron variant is starting to decrease in certain areas.
I thought I heard that too.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do it for a long period of time. I just want to get through this spike, for lack of a better word.
Why don't we do it for 30 and then reassess where we're at?
It's January.
Yeah, why don't we bring it back up at our first meeting in February?
Yeah.
We could start it now, and then look at it.
Look at what numbers are.
Our first meeting in February, and like I said, that.
Thank you.
And look at it then and see if we need to continue it, look at continuing it.
Okay.
I know we were looking at a big spike, and I know the town numbers are off the charts right now. It's not pretty.
I know it's prevalent in the schools.
Yep, it's pretty rampant.
And just that and reading the articles out there, reading everything out on the internet and stuff, it just seems like we're in a spike.
They think and anticipate we've hit that spike, and they're expecting it to
Now to go back
Right.
that
come
fast,
down,
so.
yeah.
And, yeah, who knows what it really is, because everybody's doing that at-home tests, which are not given to the Board of Health.
Right.
They are if you report, I believe, but you have to call.
In light of
Yeah,
that,
that's self-reporting, but how many people don't self-report?
would we then go back to doing our meetings via GoToMeeting? Not have live audience in the room?
We would have to, unless we're going to questionnaire. Well, you know what? I would say we would have to unless we're going to question everybody, but we very rarely have people here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, if we are doing by appointment only, I'd like to have this still opened up for people that want to come here. I mean, let's be honest, we don't have a lot of people that come to the meetings.
But I think it would be to spread the chairs out farther.
And again, with that said, too, I think we have the availability to really spread people out,
Yeah, we have the ability.
to do that. So, you know, if people would like to come, I'd like them to have that option. If they would not, then that's fine as well. But
Yeah, I mean, I really
Okay.
don't.
And then limit the number of people that could come in based upon the 6 foot.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we know that capacity here? Was it ever measured out, how many we can have in here?
It's on the wall. I think if we spread everybody out, if we picked up all the tables and spread everybody out by the 6 feet, I think we can fit, I think it was like 20 or 25.
Which is still more than we'll
The people who show up. yeah.
see, because we don't have anything controversial coming up.
How do you know?
No. And again, we'll reassess it.
Okay, but I just think to try and protect our employees, I just like to try and
No,
implement these procedures.
Nope, and I would agree, but also people are going to work every day, they're going to grocery stores every day, they're carrying out their life.
Life
But
is
also-
resuming.
Right, but I want to make sure that we're, like I said, we have a system in place, so we can, you know, protect not just our employees, but protect the people that are coming in here as well.
Right.
Like you said, by appointment only, you kind of can control the amount of people in here at any given time.
Yes.
You gotta tell the council of aging people that also, right?
Yeah, I'll tell her that. Well, they're closed through the January 31st anyways for all their programs, so.
Perfect.
Yep, so.
But I will let the Board of Health know that the board agreed with doing that, because I think they have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and that way, maybe they'll sign on with us at the same point. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Now, I want to just verify with you, Glenn, Council on Aging budget. Keep the transport driver at the original 40 hours per pay and not drop it to 30. And did you want to keep the clerk placeholder in there too for a certain number of hours per week?
No, she said that they can absorb, they have absorbed the work that the clerk would do.
Okay.
My just concern was that, 2024, are you still absorbing the work that the clerk did, or do you need to put a clerk back in the budget? That was my concern, that, where that comes from, because now you've already increased other people's pay. However, now you want to put a position that you took away and put it back in the table. So that was my only concern with that.
Well, that's why I wasn't sure if you wanted me to keep like a placeholder in there for that part-time.
I would like to keep some type of placeholder in there that is there.
Okay.
Like I said,
For the clerk?
yeah.
And,
So that's my concern, because you don't,
So all I'm saying is her budget may not save $3,300, it may go up $2,000 or $3,000.
And I'm fine with that. To me,
Okay.
a budget, that budget to go up $2,000 or $3,000, I think is a minimal cost of what the counseling agent provides to our seniors.
And that's fine, I just wanted to make sure I understood where you were going with that.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I will be talking to Lisa tomorrow about the
Yeah.
changes.
No, but like I said, I appreciate that their staff is picking up the duties that they would have for a clerk, but however, you're also acknowledging that and giving them, other people, more money, so that, you know, like I said, in 2 years from now, 2024, that could be a different budget, that could be, you know, we could be up and running full swing, and, you know, a lot more responsibilities now for a clerk, and so on and so forth, so just to kind of keep those things there.
And those people who want to volunteer now may find other
Yeah.
places they may want to
We're gonna-
volunteer
yeah.
when we go
Right.
back to normal, too,
Right.
so.
And they
Okay,
used
I
to have
just,
movies here, and you had, you know, you had 20 people in there watching movies and stuff like that, those, hopefully those days are coming back.
yep. Okay, thank you.
Was that everything you had? You're good with this now, Chris?
Yep.
You got anything?
No.
You got anything?
I got it.
I got nothing.
All right.
All right. Is there
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion to adjourn.
Is there any discussion regarding this? All in favor?
Aye.